Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm Aman.
I'm Ayush, and today we will be talking about the idiot box. Or is it the idiot box anymore? Because these TVs have become quite smart now, Aman.
You hit it on the nail there, right? I mean, what's the world without smart technology, right? It's almost like you're living in the Stone Age if it isn't smart anymore, right? So it's this another gambit, or it's another piece of this giant tech puzzle that we, build our lives around, almost from your phone to your computer to smart homes. And an essential part of your home is your television. And our conversation of gaming, and if you're in a gaming console, then you're going to need a nice television, or to stream all new content, Netflix, maybe even to watch us on like a nice big 80-inch TV. You might want to get a nice TV for that. So it's an interesting conversation, and we hope to make it a little easy for people out there who are confused as to what television to get. And I'm going to ask you one thing. Can you imagine what is the geekiest thing you could possibly do when it comes to TVs? Do you know what it is?
I don't know. I mean, what I would do is either I'd get the best OLED TV out there, or maybe the top end QLED TV, because it's not only about OLED and QLED, and we're going to find that out in a bit. It's also a lot about, well, some of the features and the software that runs on those TVs, because these TVs have become smart. But what I would really consider in terms of a television, and I really think it's not geeky, but I wish some of the top end TVs got it, like the OnePlus TV, where the sound bar, the speakers, whatever, hundreds of watts of them just slide down the minute you switch it on, or the minute you play a song on your phone. That's kind of cool. I think. What else can you do?
So, listen to this. This is what I did, and you probably remember me telling you this. I went and got 6 55-inch Samsung TVs, and I put them 3 on top, 3 on the bottom. So you have 6 of them combined, and I made it one big giant TV.
This is for one of your architectural things?
Yeah, so this was back when I was in school. It was for my thesis presentation. It was an installation of a completely computer-generated film that I made on architecture and social issues in Mumbai and gentrification. And I won't go into that, but what I did was I made I basically wanted it to be a widescreen format. So I took that's why it's 3 and 3. So it's sort of wide. It's more. It's wider rather than it being taller, and that allows you to sort of see a lot more in one frame. Almost similar to if you were to get one of those curved displays that you get now for your PCs, and how games are now they have an additional layer of sort of immersiveness because of the curved wrap around that gives you more to see. So that's essentially what I did, and it was fun.
Well, the only thing I know about that is I remember that there was a fantastic voiceover. So those TVs better have had a good sound system, because I hear a top voiceover artist did that film for you.
And for those of you who haven't guessed by now, you're looking at him right there. Ayush did an absolutely brilliant voiceover for me, and it was really successful, and it was fun making it. And that's where I started looking. Actually, that's when I wanted to. I started looking into TVs, and it eventually led to me when I made my purchase of my TV in my room. But before we get into there, let's go back. Let's start now talking about the actual technology behind these TVs, right? You have OLED and QLED, as you mentioned, and they're actually 2 completely different technologies, even though they sound very similar. There's just 1 letter difference, right?
You're right, Aman. So OLED and QLED is obviously the rich man's dream. And until they get more affordable, what everyone goes in for is actually an LED TV, which is confusing because it's actually an LCD TV. An LCD TV with these LEDs, this layer of this backlight, which actually emits, that sort of picture onto a screen, is what is right here behind me. I got a full HD LED TV at the beginning of the lockdown as a spare TV because my previous one wasn't working. Now this one is a View TV you get in India. Strangely, it's designed in California, but it's obviously an Indian brand, and it runs on Google's OS. So that works really well with an Android TV. And then in the hall, I have a QLED TV. Now, what is QLED? What is OLED? What is LED? Let's break that down first, because
Yes.
I can imagine it's quite unsettling for someone, even us sometimes, to catch up with this, because 6 months from now, and actually maybe a few weeks from now, when Apple launches their new iPad, then we're going to be talking about mini LEDs and micro LEDs. We already saw it at CES. Companies are talking about this being the next frontier. But does it make a difference? Can the human eye really discern or make that difference? Let's find out. Well, I really think, Aman, it starts off with those LEDs, right? Which are
Yes.
the basic, the cheap ones. You can get them at even $200. I picked this up for something around that much, maybe even less on a good deal. They've been in the market for nearly the best part of the decade. And that's when we saw that innovation. Samsung used to come up with great LED TVs, but then all of a sudden LG launched OLED panels. And now even, of course, the other companies have come about with them and introduced them. Sony's going, really big on OLEDs.
OLED. Yep.
Well, OLEDs, what they actually do is, if you thought LED is one level, then you really crank things up and you reach OLED. But then what Samsung thought about was that, hey, listen, we are the biggest TV manufacturers, also some of the biggest smartphone manufacturers, but also the biggest TV manufacturers in the world. So what do? We can really get our R&D team to tweak that LED technology, because it's ubiquitous, and we have the panels ready. How do we change that? How do we just incrementally tweak it and work with the OS and work with the software and then make it something by itself? That's where the confusion starts. That's called QLED, or a quantum LED. Guys, that is just an LCD display or an LED display. The difference is it has quantum dots, and that technology basically means that it can essentially light up parts of that screen and give you crazy amounts of brightness and almost replicate the deep blacks that you get on an OLED. On an OLED, if you watch a firework display, I wish we can put it up on the YouTube video, like a firework display in the middle of the night, you're going to see, well, these crisp and deep blacks, and then you're going to see these bright colors. But yes, there will be issues which we'll talk about, but essentially that's the best way to understand it. A few years ago, QLED perhaps didn't look as good as an OLED, but now that gap has been bridged, and Samsung's best QLED TV versus LG's best OLED TV, I think, Aman, it's kind of it's difficult for the naked eye to pick up the difference, and even if you do, each of them have their pros and cons.
Absolutely. It's actually next to impossible to be able to tell the difference with your naked eye. Maybe if you really stood 1 centimeter in front of your TV and you looked at one pixel or one dot out there, you would be able to tell the difference. But just going back for a second there. So I wanted to talk about this and why QLED has come up so much, right? Like, what is the change that they made to make this as good, if not better, than OLED? So and this is going to go a little bit into like the dimming and how that actually helps the brightness and the darkness of the TVs, and how it makes blacks richer and your whites brighter. So what Samsung did is, a few years ago, they used to have about 300 dimming zones. So it broke up your screen essentially into 300 different parts, and it could control the brightness of each of these parts separately, obviously, and that helped to make your final disc, the final picture quality, brighter on whites and darker on darks. Today, they made the 300 600. That's a lot more zones, it's a lot more control, and that's how they're being able to match, at least to the naked eye, they're being able to match that brightness that an OLED, and OLED stands for organic LED, where it's each individual pixel or each individual dot sort of emitting light. So you can
essentially,
understand the difference
what
there.
you're saying is, Aman, that if I have an OLED TV, then I can safely say that technically and technologically speaking, I will get the crispest and the darkest blacks possible, because if you have so many pixels or so many dots or so many LEDs, well, essentially they're going to go off. When we're talking about a starry night, we're only going to see the areas with stars and planets lighting up. Everything else will be switched off. So it's actually as close to reality as possible for something emitting light. When it comes to a QLED, it's going to take dimming zones, and I'm guessing with those dimming zones
Exactly.
is how active dimming works, right? And so that also
Exactly.
becomes an other interesting aspect that I should consider if I'm in the market for a TV. How is the local dimming? How is the active dimming? Because if I have a good algorithm working on that, and if Samsung or the other competing company has managed to work that out, then maybe in a well brightly lit room, I won't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. That's it's right on cue there, because obviously OLED's going to give you all of that, but Samsung have been able to achieve pretty much the same thing with not having to go that entire route, and they're giving you something that, we'll talk about a little later, that seems to last a lot longer than a typical OLED TV. And the main thing, you said it right there, in an OLED, they basically, the dots just go off, so there's absolutely zero light, and that's why they're black. But an LED TV has a layer that's emitting light through the LCD screen, which is the image. And if they're being able to like turn off that light behind the part that's supposed to be black due to their multiple dimming zones, it's pretty much the same thing. So
Fascinating technology, right?
it's fascinating. It absolutely is fascinating. And we haven't even started talking about mini LEDs and what the future of LED TV is going to be.
And also, I mean, when we spoke about OLED screens coming to phones, and all these, basically, the iPhone for the longest time had LCD screens. Now, why do they
Yes.
move to OLEDs? Is because not only can they give you brighter colors and deeper colors on phone screens as well, but it also conserves more battery on phones. So
Absolutely.
that really helps with some of these new iPhones, because they finally caught up with their Android counterparts. But getting back to TVs, Aman, you said something very, very interesting, which you said you want to touch upon later, is that no matter how expensive, now, just everyone talking about the OLEDs and going into the market thinking OLED is the ultimate thing. Look, I have worked with some of these companies as a content strategist. I'm not going to name each of them, but they come in telling you that their technology is the best shit ever. And you know what? To be fair, if I worked at that company, I think so as well. And if you're a loyalist of a particular brand, you should think so as well. But it's always nice to geek it out, take it out like us, take 2 steps back and genuinely understand what the objective flaws are and the pros and cons are with each technology. And it happens with OLEDs as well. OLEDs could cost you, starting, the cheapest OLED would cost you just under 1 lakh rupees in India. Aman, I think it's similar in America as well.
Yeah, I think the cheapest one you could get is maybe $1,600, which is a lot of dough there, and you're
Which
not
is a
even
lot.
getting a nice big screen.
And you
it's
guys, and it's supposed to be cheaper for you guys than it is for us in India as well, because India
is
is a little
true,
more
yeah.
expensive with duty and stuff. And then if you want a really good QLED TV by Samsung, like the one I have in the hall, I'll show it to you maybe in a subsequent episode. We'll do a review. It's called the Samsung Frame. It doubles up as a beautiful photo frame, really good QLED, 4K. We'll come to the 4K bit in a bit, and that costs you somewhere around 80,000 rupees. In that, and brilliant sound, it also gives me a high refresh rate. That's also, or I've basically given away the whole conversation there. But just think about it. There's a 20,000 rupee difference, and I've got a massive TV size. Like Aman said, you might get a smaller, maybe a 48-inch or a 50-inch with the LG
I actually
OLED.
looked at, I was looking at the prices, because the $1,600 or the $1,500 48-inch OLED is actually compared to an 82-inch Samsung
My God.
QLED for $100 more. The 82-inch Samsung is $1,700, and the OLED is about $1,599. It's about $1,600.
Yeah, so if I go pick
$100
up a 65-inch, perhaps I'd get it cheaper, and a bigger
Yeah,
TV
100%.
and with really good features as well, right? So,
Yeah.
but something you mentioned, which is a big con about OLEDs, which the industry and the technology have still tried, they're still grappling with this issue. So let's put it out there for you. You might be having a lot of money, buddy, but if you want to spend it, Mr. Consumer, think about that OLED, because the OLED companies, no matter how much they tell you they fixed it, there's a genuine technological flaw, and that's called screen burn-in. What that essentially means is, if you're watching Aman and me on an OLED TV on this podcast throughout, which is on YouTube, and if we've uploaded obviously in 4K and it's at its best resolution, and the Let's Tech About It logos coming in between us, well, if you've watched us and you're absolutely crazy, and I don't know why you do that, because we're quite boring that way, but if you watched us for maybe 6 hours or 8 hours a day for many days. And this is a panel which shouldn't have that issue. But if you do that for a few months or a few years and you don't end up watching Netflix or you don't end up watching something else, so instead of this podcast, you tune into CNBC because you're a markets buff and you always kept it on mute. So then the CNBC logo would come at the bottom right of your TV, perhaps the market sticker would come at the bottom. What that would essentially mean is if it's a static thing like the logos and there's not much movement and you're always watching the same type of content, it leads to a sort of blackening or an imprint of that logo on your panel. And when you spend around 1 or 2 lakhs or maybe $2,000 on a TV, you don't want a screen burn-in issue. What is their solution? And not their solution, but what's the technology world's big solution? It's the most jugaadu solution, the quickest fix, which is keep watching different types of
Different
content.
things.
So, I mean, I don't think I would want something like that. But at the end of the day, if you are someone, it depends on your use case. If you're watching a lot of different types of things, if you play different types of games, if you're not just watching a news channel or one sports show or one podcast, well, then there's maybe a use case for you. Now, a lot of companies are telling you there's a screen burn-in warranty. So we won't let the screen burn-in happen for 10 years, 5 years. Strangely enough, a lot of the companies selling Aman QLED panels, which are the competitors to the expensive OLED,
Right.
just to take a dig at them, have been saying we're giving you a screen panel warranty because you can't have burn-in. Technologically and technically speaking, QLEDs aren't known to have burn-in issues. It's
You
OLEDs
just cannot
that
have it.
Exactly.
The technology doesn't allow for burn-in because the part of the tech that's emitting light is different from the part of the screen that's
Correct.
actually displaying the image. It's 2 different layers in the build-up of the television. So it just cannot happen, that burning issue.
You know, I've watched so many YouTube videos, and there's some great guys with television guides in the US, and they're not MKBHD unbox therapy type videos. There's basically 8 TVs like you see in a TV store, and that guy has run tests on them with all sorts of machines for 8 months or 10 months with the same content running. Now, if he gets results, I mean, that's the best way that you can I don't want people tuning into our podcast to have to go through those videos for 15 minutes because they're quite boring for other people. But for me, it was an eye-opener because I've never owned an OLED TV. I own a really nice QLED TV and LED TVs in my house. And you see the difference automatically. But that's just one bit, right? The OLED QLED debate. Then there's also the very quick one, which we should touch upon, which now everyone knows, which is 4K, 8K versus 4K versus full HD and
Full
half HD. Half HD is just gone, right? No one uses that anymore. Please don't.
I mean,
please just
don't
wake
make the
up,
mistake of
smell the
buying.
coffee. Yeah, smell the coffee. Then you have full HD, which is most of these TVs. And obviously now if you're investing in a TV in 2021, it better be a 4K TV. And if you have that extra bit of dough, then it should be an 8K TV. But
8K.
do we have enough 8K content coming up over there in the first place?
Not a lot. There are, of course, I know there's a lot of OTTs that do support it, but with 8K, you also have to make sure you have a HDMI 2.1 because that's the only way it'll support HD streaming. So, I mean, if you're going in for a next-gen console or Blu-ray DVD player, you're going to have to make sure it's, HDMI 2.1 because that's the way you will be able to stream in 8K or any kind of 8K content. It's going to use the newest HDMI 2.1. I think what we're saying is 4K is the bare minimum. Please don't go lower than that because what we want to do is sort of make sure that you are you're future-proof or you're preparing yourself for the future and the next sort of wave of TV technology and HDMI and streaming and all of the good stuff that comes with that.
But in a way, Aman, I don't even think it's future-proof anymore. Obviously, you can do with these full HD TVs. It's almost meant for the present because now every YouTuber, quite a few of them upload in 4K. And the bigger your TV screen gets, the more pronounced that sort of difference is. And you can make out that difference. Not just with that, also with some of the brilliant titles like Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. And then you want the HDR. And then you have brilliant shows on Netflix. On Netflix, if you're ever on the app, if you're on a 4K TV, you'll go down and they have a separate 4K shows, right? So
stream in 4K. Amazon Prime does the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think if you do have little off topic here, which we will come to eventually, but if you have Apple TV Plus, all of Apple's originals, or most of them, are 4K. And there's one in particular, it's called Earth at Night.
Oh, that's
I
amazing.
mean, it is absolutely stunning.
Yes.
It is the most beautiful stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to watch it anywhere except on my 4K TV.
You know, that's strange because I actually enjoy watching it even that on the Apple TV
iPhone.
Plus app on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I know the screen is small, but in terms of the definition,
Crispness, yeah.
it's a class apart. 4K HDR. Now, HDR is the other thing that we want to talk about. Very quickly, we can touch upon it. HDR essentially, Aman, is a high dynamic range, right? Now in a high dynamic range there are so many different certifications. Now Dolby has their own. Now, when you go for Dolby, obviously these people are adhering to top standards, and then Dolby is also taking a fee for you to say that this is Dolby Vision compatible. But then HDR10 is what I think the entire industry has agreed on.
Yeah.
Samsung's come up with their own HDR10 Plus. Don't get confused. If that TV is HLG is also another one. But if that TV is HDR compatible and it says Dolby Vision, don't think. It's quite good. Most titles will work really well on it. Most of the OTT services will have content for it. What that essentially means is that if you have a 4K TV, you're going to get the most out of your colors. You're going to get perhaps the higher contrast levels and increased brightness, right? Nits of brightness will be more. That's HDR. So you need that. Now, the main thing that I want to talk to you about is refresh rate.
I was just going to come to that.
That is something as gamers and as people who want to buy our next gen consoles, and perhaps really now when you can talk about future proofing, I really think that is what's most important. Now, to give you an instance, everything usually runs on 60 hertz. Most of these TVs do. The TV in the hall, mine can go up to 120 hertz, and it adjusts that frame rate. And that's a real rate, not an effective refresh rate.
Yes, please don't get confused with effective frame rate, because essentially that is basically a jugad, or they're basically conning you to believe that it's a 120 hertz, where essentially all they're doing is adding a frame in the middle and calling it 120 hertz, and it appears to be smoother where it is not in reality. And I think for those of you who are in the market for a next gen console, you are definitely want to look into getting a 120 hertz display, because that's when you're going to make the most of that console, right? You're going to get your HDR, you're going to get 120 hertz refresh rate, and you're going to get, obviously 4K, and that's your base for the best gaming experience. And also a lot of content, it looks better on 120 hertz, and content that's not made for 120 hertz, a lot of the televisions have the technology to upscale, exactly. And I've only seen it, I think, on Samsung and LG, and they actually do it really well.
So Aman mentions that, and the way they actually fool you, a lot of these companies, if you go down to the specifications, you're like, oh, I did my due diligence. I think some of them call it MEMC or image smoothing, and they have different terms and different technologies. Every company has their own marketing team spinning some new stuff. But what Aman said in one line is spot on. They basically computationally convince you that the frame rate has doubled. But what the real frame rate, what the hardware of that TV is capable of, is only perhaps 60 hertz. And sometimes they even get as audacious as to suggest 180 and 200 hertz, which doesn't make sense. So don't fall for that. Don't start comparing apples with oranges. Always go down to maybe a TV store or to the best, Tom's Guide and the other portals which actually are unbiased, and check out what that means, or just write into us on letstechpodcast@gmail.com. You can write into us in the comments section. Aman and I always watching that section like hawks. And then just drop a message on Instagram. Even that, I mean, we're very happy to help, because we have geeked it out and tried to figure out how this works so many times, because this is something you got to keep updating every 6 months, because the technology changes, the marketing team spins something new, and then we try to just really rummage through all of that and come up with our own research. And other thing that Aman really gets pissed off with, and he forgot to mention it, and now I'm just going to hand it over to him, is the software experience. And that's something it's a pain point for you personally. I'll just give you some perspective before I hand it over to you. This TV, the one in my room, is running, like I said, on it's an Android TV, and a lot of companies are going to Google for this. Some companies go to Amazon for it, and then of course, you have Samsung, which runs its own OS, and then LG that runs a Linux-based, I think, web OS. What has bothering you? I can see the look on your face. Something's bothering you about this.
Yeah. So when we started this conversation, right, we said your TV's got to be smart, and you got to be smart when you buy it, because this is a crunch point, and I did not realize it when I bought my TV, and it frustrates me right now, the whole software experience that I have on my television, and that's why I want to tell you guys: make sure you do your research, and today we're moving away from cable TV. The world is moving away to a subscription based world where you're going to choose the apps that you use to stream your favorite shows, and so you need to make sure that those apps are available for your TV. And also the other important thing, and it's really dumb, but it's important. It's the remote of the TV, because if you have one of those old school traditional remotes, it's going to be frustrating to keep typing what you're searching for. So that's another thing to look about it, and it's all built into the software. So I have an LG TV, and I don't like its software. It's not good. It doesn't have all the apps. It's very not user friendly, and that's why I'm actually considering, hopefully in a few days, Apple will launch a new Apple TV, and I might get that. But don't make the mistake I made. Just do your research. I think it should just be like Android TV or Google TV should probably just be inbuilt. Like LG and Samsung should just stop making their own OS and just adopt Google TV, because that way every app that you get for your phone for streaming will be available for your TV. And that's why I wanted to get the Apple TV, because every app that I have installed on my phone will come up on my TV, no questions asked.
So, so for those of you who, I'm just going to add that, for those of you who aren't really geeking it out and are just tuned in right now because your mom and dad have asked you to pick up a new TV, and this is not something that you have done your research on, this is your one-stop shop, so share it with all your friends. But when Aman talks about the Apple TV, I know in India we've not bought too many of them. We have the Apple TV app, which is there on Samsung TVs, not there on Google TVs. But Apple TV, what he talks about is the streaming device, just like the Amazon Fire Stick. Apple has a box which costs a lot more than a Fire Stick, and perhaps they didn't push with its marketing. But now, since they are acquiring a lot of content and they're going big on their OTT service, perhaps we could see with this new launch that Aman's talking about, that Apple TV goes big here also. A lot of people thought that their remote was well ahead of its time, but even then it was perhaps, let's say, not as utilitarian like Aman's saying. Samsung's really cracked the remote.
Yeah, it was the most criticized point of the Apple TV was the remote, even though they were the first ones to completely reinvent the remote, and Samsung adopted it. And now Samsung's got it right. Like, their remote is amazing, and it looks pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it looks cool. And Aman's right, actually on my Samsung TV, you get an option, and this is what I like. Though Samsung's app store is very, very, very limited, he's right, but it's quite smooth with the overall OS. They give me Apple TV, which hasn't been working, and I checked online, a lot of people have been complaining about the Apple TV suddenly going off. So it comes on, I get all the tiles, and I've reloaded it, I've reset it, I've reset the Wi-Fi, I've cleared everything. And even then, it's not playing a few titles. So this didn't happen for the first few weeks. Now it's begun to happen. Maybe I'm guessing Samsung will fix it with an OS update, which happens regularly. Samsung does that quite well. But one thing I wanted to mention, Aman, was that they've gotten their OS right, and they've given you that sort of functionality. They know that they've really messed up with Bixby, and it's quite crappy. So their voice assistant is a third option. Then they give you a second option of Amazon Alexa, because in India, Alexa's really worked with English and with regional languages. And then if you just want Google Assistant with its limited capabilities, then they let you use the Google Assistant as well. So I think that is the way forward. None of you all should be protectionists. Give me the option to use the best product out there and integrate with each other, because you're all getting apps in the back end. Samsung, you're right. If they gave me a Samsung TV, which Sony does, Sony's way more expensive, but Sony does give me Android-based TVs. They've really switched over.
I was going to say that, yeah.
So that's kind of interesting, because whenever I look for an Android TV hack, the Sony website based on SEO comes up right on top, and you're wondering, saying, hey, but my Chinese-made TV and whatever doesn't seem like I can use these things, but the Sony OS and the settings that they've built on the Google based OS is very interesting, because obviously Sony's been doing this for a long time, but Sony is out of your budget often, right? Like you'd be spending $2,500, $3,000. That's not worth it.
No,
right?
more.
More.
Yeah, I'm just looking at. I had opened up the Sony website a little while back. Their top end ones are about $4,000, and they're all with. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
But they're all Android TV. They're inbuilt Android TV, and I think that that itself is the best thing Sony could have done. I know I'm quite touchy when it comes to this, because I've really been frustrated with my TV. Like, I still, till today, I cannot get HBO Max on my TV. Like, I have to connect my Chromecast and then cast it from my phone, which is the most redundant thing to do when you have a smart TV.
Yeah, that defeats the purpose. That makes it
Exactly.
the idiot box back again. But I think, Aman, those are very interesting points, and I think this will really help a lot of people. I know so many of my family friends who call me up for this, and sometimes I call up people who are very into TVs or sell them or understand them better.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just call up technicians. And I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know what?
Yeah.
How many times are you getting service requests for these TVs? The comment section is a treasure trove, guys, when it comes to understanding what kind of after-sales support. Like Hisense has come here to India, and it does well abroad.
Right.
It's sponsored so many football tournaments and stuff like that. But apparently Hisense, when it set up over here, had big plans. Then coronavirus happened, and sometimes Amazon comments down over there read 4 or 5 weeks to even come set it up. So they take your old TV in exchange. It's lying there in a box, and then what's the point? Hisense TVs, the same panels are being used in View TVs, which are very popular in India. Now View is, for whatever it's worth, as an Indian company, they're making some fantastic deals. I think you guys have Vizio and the others doing it out there as well. So there's different stages in the market. Nokia has come here in a big way, and they've tied up with JBL, and they're giving you JBL soundbars. That's another thing, right? Sound becomes an issue. My parents need really good sound and dialogues, and often when Netflix films are in foreign accents, it becomes tough for us. Subtitles are not always what we want. So it's great if you have these TVs are, low firing speakers. If you get front firing speakers, half your problems sorted.
That's the best thing.
That's the best thing. Or be
That's
like
the
Aman
best
and invest in a good soundbar. That's the other option you have.
Yeah, the soundbar is another really good way to do it. When you mentioned Vizio do some really good deals where they'll give you a soundbar free, or they'll bundle it in with your TV. If you're a Costco member here in the US, just go to Costco. You're going to get the best deals out there. And a little side note here, I know Sony and LG build or manufacture TVs separately just for Costco. And they're priced slightly lower just because they're manufactured separately for Costco. Going back to when I did the 6 TVs setup, so I went and bought 6 TVs from Costco, and a friend of mine who had a similar setup, didn't have 6, had I think 4, he bought them from a regular Best Buy, and we bought the exact same model number. Now, let me tell you this, there's actually one letter difference in the model number. There is an extra M or D, if I remember correctly, in the model number. The TV is exactly the same, the software is the same, everything is the same, but there was a very, very slight color difference in the metal frame of the TV. That was it. That was the difference. And this is not the time for that conversation as to why Samsung and LG or whatever the companies are manufacturing separately, but they're doing it, and they're accepting the fact that people do go to Costco and people go to some of these wholesale dealers and buy their things and buy their tech products from there.
And my smart Gujarati friend obviously is a smart businessman. He's not going to be wasting money on that. So he's going to go, and this is why I really envy all of you guys in America, because you can go down there, pick up something, try it out for a week, anything, iPhone, TV, and then give it back. We can't do that here.
Not a week, Ayush.
A month.
Costco will let me return for up to 1 year.
My God. See, so that's a smart consumer, and that's why you should tune in to the Let's Tech About It podcast, because you have guys like me who waste all their money on just products, and then guys like him who really know how to, well, game the system. So Aman, see, you're balancing it out for me, and I think that's the beauty of it, right? You have to be a sound, well, business mind, and someone who's really shrewd with these deals. I like doing it as well, but I like to rely on Aman for his business acumen. This has been an interesting episode, guys. Do write into us. Do tell us what you feel, what you feel about this episode and our series. We're here to really break down some of these technology arguments and decisions for you. We're going to be covering everything in the spectrum of technology. Aman, thank you so much for waking up early for this, and I shall now say
Staying
goodnight
up
to
late.
you. And actually, well, call it a day. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. Until next time, adios.
Goodbye for now.